So you all might have noticed that I did not mention two nominal forms that are partly verbal. And those were the infinitive and the participle. And modern South Arabian does not seem to have a parallel or a direct parallel of the infinitive, and Jubali does not have a parallel of the participle, but Mehri does, and it is called the future by Ruben. So in this form, this is the GA stem in Mehri. So what Jibali has fa'al, Mehri as fa'ul. So begud, libged, yibugid. But never mind about that. The future tense or the participle has this N in the masculine singular, bigdona, but no N in the feminine singular, bigdita. So this is a little bit similar to some adjectival forms in different languages like Aramaic or even Hebrew. The plural forms are quite weird, Begyeda and Begduten. So Begduten is not weird at all. It is pretty much a regular result of what I would expect from Bagidatun or something like that, even with the Tanween. But Begyeda is certainly different. And the dual forms are Bigdoni and Bigdauti. I don't know where this Bigdona comes from, why there's an on at the end, if it's indeed the participle. I wish I knew. In the other stems, we have this future as well. So for example, in the GB stem and in the G passive, it's exactly the same. So Bigdona, Kitbona, Rikbona, and so on. In the DL stem or the H2 stem, it is Marokib, Markabeta, Marakbi, Markbeti, Markbuten. So this is already really, really Semitic. So you have this M prefix, you have this A that comes from what we think is an original H, an original causative particle. And then you have the stem. And it's interesting that the plurals have merged in the masculine and feminine, which is a little bit reminiscent of the Akkadian form, parasutim, or something like that, for the adjective verbs, adjective plurals. So I don't know. Any question? No? Okay. Another thing that is interesting and fun about Mehri is that it retains the H in the H1 stem in all of the forms, not all Mehri forms, but Omani Mehri specifically. So we have this H, Herkub, Herkub, Herkibk, and so forth. In the subjunctive, El Harkib, the Harkib. So this is exactly like Ushapris or something like that in Akkadian, or Yahaf'il in some ancient variety of Aramaic, and even in the imperfect, Herkub, something like Ushapras. Any question about the H1 stem? No? About modern South Arabian in general? We can see once again the allophony, allomorphy between Herkub, in which the R is not voiceless and non-emphatic, and the K is, and Faruk, in which the F is voiceless and non-emphatic, and the R isn't. Farouk, Farouk, with a geminate F at the beginning of a word. Is there anything else to mention here? I am not sure. You can see that the forms are pretty much the same in most of the places. We can also see that in some of the forms, there is more diversity in the vowels in Mehri than in Jibali. So, for example, in Mehri, ikhtiluf and yikhtilof, and Jibali, they would have the exact same vowel pattern. And in Mehri, one has U and one has O. So these distinctions between U and O and A and E are quite common in Mehri. And not as much in Jibali. We can mention just very briefly some of the effects that gutturals have because they are really, really interesting, but a little bit difficult. So if the first radical is a guttural, there's no problem at all usually. But in Mehri, there's also a rule that if a certain consonant is guttural or emphatic, then U and E vowels after it, or before it, usually after, change into AU and I diphthongs. So instead of yebuged, you get yechaudem. But that's quite regular. In the third gutturals, however, you have far bigger problems. So ktub in the GA regular becomes sumh in the GA3 guttural. There is no connection at all between these two forms. Ktub, sumh. Ktaub, sumhum. It's not similar at all. So it's quite different in its conjugation. So once again, in modern South Arabian, a lot of the allophony came from voiceless and non-emphatic consonants and came from geminate roots and came from roots with gutturals and rarely also with glides have changed into completely different allomorphic stems. And here, specifically in these ones, just unrecognizable as G1, GA, because there's nothing similar between Nuka and Nakam and Ktub and Ktaub. We can see this M in the plural of some forms in Mehri. There hasn't been really any rule described until now, but you can see it sometimes both in the past and the imperfect and subjunctive. And I think that's pretty much it. Is there any other question? No. Are you sure? Feel free. Next week, we have the presentation by Jonathan, who has left. I hope he wasn't offended by what I said. You can see that the gutturals also just sometimes play with the vowels, but that's not very surprising. So anyway, as long as you don't have any questions, I will see you next week. And thank you for coming, as always. And have a great weekend.